Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Overcoming the Podcast. If you do not know by now, I am your host, Taylor. And today you just get me. We are going to be doing a part 2 on no contact because, as you may have seen, I recently was in partial contact with the no contact parent in order to see my youngest brother. And if you're not familiar with that story, he has special needs. And so, in order to see him, I would need to have contact with that parent. And basically, long story short, there, just as an intro, when I went to see him about a couple months after going no contact with that parent, it was clear to me that this was a vindictive thing. There was like something used against me and they were hurt, and it was only hurting my brother and also hurting me in the process. And so I didn't want anything to do with that. And so I made the choice to just cut contact completely, knowing what that meant and knowing that it would be really hard not to see my brother, but it was just not something that I was willing or able to manage those triggers at that time. And especially having just gotten those repressed memories of why significantly I'm no contact with my once good parent, that I really just didn't have the capacity in my nervous system to deal with any of their tactics. And also, I just kind of knew that I needed some space for my healing. And that kind of brings me to today. So, going back a couple weeks now, is getting closer to my youngest brother's birthday. And at this point, I have been no contact since about February, something in there with my family, February 22. And I have been, last time I saw my brother was sometime in April. I calculated it out at one point. But anyway, so it had been over a year since I had seen my brother. And there was, of course, there's been this hole in my heart since. And I have been very frustrated that I've had to make this choice. But at the same time, I knew that it was the right thing. And I knew that he understood in a way, like there was just some kind of like unspoken connection when we said goodbye. And I said, Sissy has to go away for a while. And he like held me different. He knew. And obviously it's emotional. And I care a lot. And so, whew, right before his birthday, the grief was unbearable. And I was sitting in my therapist's office the day before his birthday. And I haven't been this emotional about this whole situation until this point. Like when I talk about it, I cry a little bit, but then I can put it away. But obviously, he holds a special place in my heart. And this whole situation has been really hard. But again, I chose this, I know, and I understand. And I know it's the right thing to do. And I haven't regretted it. But if you remember what I was talking about earlier, is that I didn't have the tools and I didn't have the capacity. And now I do. I was talking to my therapist and just sobbing and saying that I really think that I wanted to try and see him again because it'd been a while. Maybe things are a little bit different and how the no contact parent would act. You know, I have much more capacity now. I've been healing and growing, and honestly, I've been thriving. Like, I'm at such a point in my healing. I'm so proud of myself and the growth. And it's not just me who sees it. There's so many people around me and my therapist, and like I'm just at a really great point in life and in my healing especially. And so knowing that this would trigger me and it would be very hard and, you know, it could potentially pull me back in my healing because I've done so well and I haven't really seen that parent since, I decided to reach out. And I actually did it when I was in the therapy office. The whole session was based on that and me crying and processing and trying to figure out how to do it. And I just decided I'm going to do it now because if I don't, I'm not going to. I'm going to talk myself out of it. And so I did. And I read the message to my therapist, and it was a little bit harsh at first. And she had me kind of pull back a little bit. So I did. And I basically said, sometime in the next 2 weeks, I would like to be able to see my brother. I understand that he has a different schedule, blah, blah, blah. Let me know. And I can be flexible. And that was it. So that probably 15 minutes into the session. And then by the end of the session, and I was still with my therapist, she responded. And it was just very much like a very distant, not pushing, not anything else, but it was just basically like, you can see him. This day would work. What do you, let me know if this works for you. And I was like, okay. And then I asked if I could see them and basically like made plans to be able to see him. And my plan was to pick him up from his day program on a Friday afternoon, and he could come home and like sleep over at my house. So I would get significant time with him, and then sometime in the afternoon that next day I could drop him back off at the mom's. So for me, that's capacity for me, knowing that I would really only have one moment that I would have to be in direct contact with my mom during pickup and drop off. And also to the pickup, which would be the hardest thing that could potentially impact how the rest of the weekend went, would be with a neutral party. And all they would have to do is just let me sign him out. So that's what happened. So I essentially did that, and it was, the plan was set, felt good about it. But then his birthday hit, and I'd still made the plans to see him. But it didn't feel real. It didn't feel real at all. And I was still just in heavy grief, sobbing, uncontrollable. And even I was working that day, and I was around kiddos, and I was crying at one point and just like trying to hide it from them. And one of the little kids just came over and gave me a hug. And it was just very sweet. But like I was to the point where like I couldn't hide my emotions, and I couldn't compartmentalize them because they were so strong. And so there was the fear that maybe this opportunity would be taken away from me. Maybe this is a manipulation tactic, giving me hope and then saying, never mind. Maybe it was going to be kind of like last time, where it was very clear that like they used this, and it was very clear they didn't tell my brother ahead of time that I was coming to pick them up, and which was out of their routine. And so my brother said before, his special needs, and he has a cognitive level of like 5 or 6 years old. And one of the things is he thrives in routine. And if his routine is off, he is so dysregulated, it goes into complete meltdown. Well, it was clear that no one told him I was coming. And so when I showed up the first time to his day program to take him to lunch, he was really upset. And was talking about the rest of his plan that he had the rest of his day, and that sister wasn't in the plan, and he's not doing this. He was supposed to eat lunch and all the things. And he ended up being fine once I took him, but I realized how much stress it caused him. And of course the parent denied that, they didn't do that. Of course they told him. But I know how my brother reacts to me, and I know that's not the case. So anyways, so saw him, and it ended up being okay, but then afterwards was just nasty, and I just didn't want to deal with it. And so there were so many things running through my head that even though I had set this up and I was so excited, and it's funny too, because the day that I would have seen him is exactly 444 days since I last saw him. And if you don't know, I'm a little spiritual woo-woo. And to me, that's an angel number. And angel number 444 signifies first and foremost protection from harm, protection from things going wrong or someone trying to hurt you. But also it's a really clear message of being on the right path, and this needs to happen for your purpose. And it's like a very, very clear indicator that you are on the right path and to keep going, and you are protected in what you do. And so I was just like a little nudge. And the other thing, so then as I was leaving the therapy office, and I made this plan, and I was in my car, and I was really doubting if I could really make this happen. Like all these fears running through my head. Am I going to regress in my healing? Is this going to hurt? Is this just going to be like, I see him once and then I'll never see him again? Like, it's like, is this going to be worse than last time? Like or worse, am I going to try? Are they going to play nice? And is this going to lead me back into being somewhat in contact with them? Am I going to repeat a cycle? Like, am I strong enough to actually withhold this? Because my brother is like the thing that has always been that little door that brings me back into this, because I love him so much. And it just, I compromised so much of everything else in order to maintain a relationship with him. In the past, when I talked about in part 1 of episode 1 of No Contact, it was, the back and forth cycles was ultimately so I could have a connection with my family, but more so my brother. He's my whole world. He's my North Star. We have a very special connection and always have. And so as I'm driving, I'm on the freeway and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, and I'm crying and I'm overwhelmed. And I just contacted my parent for the first time in a very long time. And, all of this. And as I'm driving, I look down and there's a license plate that like just barely passes me on the right side. And it says G-Man 888. And G-Man is one of the things that he calls himself. It's a nickname. His name is Garrett. And 888 is again a sign of really good things. And it's like abundance of love, abundance of all the things. And like, it's just another sign of it's going to be okay. And so I'm like, okay, I'm getting all of these signs that to me mean something. And that's not a coincidence. That is his nickname with these 3 numbers that mean abundance in love. Okay. Like I recognize that. So I'm like, okay, like I can do this. I can work through this. And then it was basically like a week until then that I had to prepare for this. And, I talked to my therapist and I said, okay, next time, this is the thing that I really want to work on, because since going no contact and getting those repressed memories of how much my mother abandoned me and knowing how much now she still blames me and puts on me the whole scapegoat thing is just nasty to me. Is that looking at her face, I see an image of her face in my head and it's a trigger, and the disgust face of, oh, Taelor, you're so much. Why are you like this? Like just her face is so triggering in my mind's eye that like I am so worried about physiologically how my body is going to react if I actually see her face in person. And like I've been through big triggers before. Like my primary abuser I have seen in public 3 times since I've been no contact for almost 9 years. And I handle it well, but let me tell you, my blood was boiling. I was so triggered. I was overwhelmed. Like I made it through, and that was years ago now. And I was definitely even not as far along on my healing as I am now. So I know I can get through it in the moment, but it's the afterwards that really pulls me back. I get caught on the little things and like over analyzing things. And then I just get pulled back into these things, and then they come into my mindset again, and these triggers come back up again, and it feels like I just like regress in my healing, and the cycle completes all over again, and I get really frustrated. And so it's just a very triggering thing. And I know any trauma survivors that are listening to this, like when you experience a trigger or you come into contact with someone who was harmful, or whatever it is, it's not just in that moment that it's impactful, but so long after. And so that was my fear. And so I made a plan in order to hopefully do this moving forward with my brother, depending on how this went, was to go into EMDR therapy and process that image of my mother's face in hopes to desensitize my body's reaction to that stimulus and that trigger. So then I would be able to put that aside to be able to see my brother. Because really, when I pull that up, there is a very protective part in me that when I think of her face, I just want to scream at her. I want to call her a very crass name that I don't use. It starts with a C. And I want to scream, I have ADHD and you hated me. Like, I just want to like defend myself and like throw everything in her face that she doesn't know right now. And like how I see what she's doing, and she was a horrible person, and talk about this repressed memory and all of these things. But I recognize that that's not helpful. And I know that this person is not receptive. And in fact, even when I comment with the best therapy talk and regulation and everything right, it actually makes it worse when I bring things like this up. They get more defensive, more hurtful, and they just like attack me. And I recognize that's their trauma. And also, I am not wanting to reconcile a relationship with that person. There was just a hurt part of me that wanted them to know how hurt I was. And knowing all of these factors about me internally and things in the past and just putting all of this together, there were so many thoughts in my head like, can I really do this? Can I do this? What do I need to do to be able to do this? And so my plan was to be as neutral as possible, to try not to make eye contact, because even seeing that person, like I said, is such a trigger. And so I was just prepping myself and doing all of this nervous system work beforehand and all of this grounding. And, my anxiety obviously was very triggered, and just trying to get through my week knowing this is happening. And also, again, it not feeling real in that it might not, because they've pulled the shoes out from under me or pulled the rug out from under me before. And this is what this person does. They're manipulative, and it's very covert. I've talked about covert narcissism before. This person definitely displays those traits. I don't want to say that they are absolutely a covert narcissist, but they do act in those ways. And I see it now, and it makes me sick. But also, I recognize that responding in any way just makes it worse. So, again, all of these things in my head, I decided that, yeah, it's going to trigger me. It's going to be hard. And I'm doing this. So, been processing, working through it. And then the day comes. And I had plans to work on work stuff. So, I would be redirecting my brain that day until 3 o'clock when I went to go leave to get him and pick him up. And I ended up just like laying there and dissociating. It was very hard for me. I didn't get out of bed till like 11:30. I was, texting the very few people who knew. I didn't tell people ahead of time because, one, I couldn't even begin to process or explain. And two, it was just, again, I was afraid it wasn't going to happen. So I didn't want to have to like explain and then explain again and then my own hurt and that kind of thing. So anyways, so that day, really feeling the weight of it all and, and just so much crying again. And even on the way over there, eventually, like I just barely ate, got through, went, and I was like, I'm going to pick him up. And I remember last time I went, I was met with, don't want it. You're not supposed to be here. This is my routine. And again, I know he loves me and I know he cares about me and I know that's not the case and we were fine. But that's what I was met with last time. And I'm like, what if the same thing happens again? What if they're just trying to build a case or build some evidence that they actually don't care about me or whatever, right? Like, what are they trying to throw against me, right? So I show up and walk in and they're like, oh, so cool. And it was fine. And went to go get him and he was in the back. So it took a minute. And I was like holding back tears when I saw him, first of all. And then got into the car and he was excited to see me. He was kind of quiet at first. As he definitely can be. And, I was just telling him the routine of what we were going to do and what to expect and asking him what he would like to eat and all of those things. And he just like gradually started getting more excited. And we had a great time and, did the karaoke together and just, watched some movies that he picked out and just hanging out together. And it was just really nice to be in each other's presence again. And I forgot how much like he motivates me in life. Anyways, I'm going to not get emotional this whole episode. Okay. So spending time with him was absolutely wonderful. I was doing my due diligence, just very quick communication via text. Got him. Here you go. This is the plan for coming home. Do you have any limitations? Whatever. Again, text short, like you're texting a stranger a delivery. Like really, like nothing like I even know the person was how I was interacting with them, which is honestly what I would prefer at this point. And so, time goes on, whatever. Have a great day, wake up in the morning, and I just have this huge pit in my stomach. Felt like I was going to throw up. It was really hard for me to even make it through. And I had some work things that could have been moved up that day. And so I reached out to that parent as much as I wanted to spend as much time as I could with him. I realized my anxiety was impacting his anxiety. And like, again, he feels my energy. Like we've always been very connected in that way. And so I asked if like I could go back a little bit earlier and still instead of waiting till the end of the day. Cause like, honestly, at this point, I just wanted to get this meeting over with. It was so nice to see my brother. I had a wonderful time that day and that evening when I saw him and I was just ready. And so I did my grounding, all the things, drove over there, told them when I would be there. And then right before they asked if I could bring my dog so they could say hi. And I was just like, and I knew I had arrangements to see someone nearby as like a backup plan of if I needed help, if I was really emotional, if I needed someone there with me, if I needed co-regulation, if I just wanted someone that cared about me and loved me and saw me to be with me. I told like one or two people this was happening. And so I made that plan in place and I had that safety plan and had that recovery plan. And so I said, okay, fine. Like what I'll do is, I'm going to play nice at this point because I don't want to give them any ammunition to say you can't see them again. Because at any point they could be like, you can't see them. And they haven't until now. I mean, they haven't like up until this point, they've never said you can't see them. But you know, they have done like the whole manipulation game and the playing the little jabs and stuff. So they make it harder. That's for sure. So I was like, yeah, sure. Here's what I'll do. I will drop him off to you. I will drop the dog off with you. And I know the dog has the other dog friends there, and I'm sure would love to see them. Um, and so I was like, I'll give you a couple hours. I have a work thing I can do nearby. And I'll come back and I'll text you when I'm on my way back, and then I will pick up the dog. So did that, ended up, you know, going to drop him off, and was like really, really working on, okay, don't look at their face. Don't really say anything. Talk to your brother, drop him off, walk to the door very quickly, drop off the dog, go. Like minimal contact. They make any comments, we're not going to respond. We're not going to say anything. And so we get to the door, and she like gets down, she puts on her fake voice as she does. And she like gets down to the ground. It's like very clear, like she's not gonna be interacting with me either. So she like opens the door before I'm even there, because I told her like, hey, I'm gonna show up, whatever. So she was obviously looking out the window, waiting for me to get there. Gets down like on her knees, is like to the dog, and is like, oh, again, like body turned, not even looking at me, which again, I prefer. I don't really want any interaction either. But like, you know, it's just like making comments. It's like, oh, oh, I'm just like very clearly talking to the dog, trying to share their upset that I cut them out of their life without directly communicating to me, and also just like trying to get a rise out of me. You know what I mean? Like trying to like get their point across without actually direct communication. And this is what they do. They're very passive aggressive in that way. I just kind of ignored it, whatever, and just left. Okay. And then said, I will be in a place where I'm not really going to be able to respond much because I don't really have a lot of service, but this is my ETA for coming back. I will text you when I'm on the way back. Was within the ETA, whatever. So I was there, you know, I was with the person, and it felt really good. I actually was like super activated. I cleaned their house. I was like, I need to do something with my hands and my body right now. And like, I am obviously like shaken up, but I'm actually doing really well. I didn't say anything to them. I didn't yell. I actually was way less activated than I thought I would be. Like it was very clear that I was handling this well. My body was handling this quite well. Even though there were these things that were meant to get a rise out of me, I actually have been doing really well. And for the most part was pretty dang grounded. So proud of myself. But then once I started getting closer to pickup, I was just, you know, distracting myself and cleaning and focus on what you can control. I don't know about you, but like when I'm really, really activated in my nervous system, I go to cleaning. Like a lot. Like I'm not someone, I have ADHD. It's hard for me to like start cleaning, but if I am activated, I will be like scrubbing everything. And that's what I did at someone else's house, and it was fine. And like I was just like here, like went to like major organization, like anyway, so did that for like 2 hours. I was like cleaning my friend's house, and then texted him like I was going back. And to my surprise, come back, and I'm like, if you could have the dog ready with the leash and put the other dogs away just to make the transition easier, like that'd be great, whatever. And then did talk a little bit at pickup. Again, I tried not to look her in the eyes because it's a freaking trigger, and I didn't want to like explode and again ruin my chances of seeing my brother, but also like not give my own power away, right? Like I don't want to do that either. So did that. And, you know, she gave me back the dog was ready, whatever, and said, you know, I had to bring him inside because he kept wanting to go outside and whatever. And I was like, okay. And then she handed me Starbucks gift cards and said, I was given these. I don't use them. I know you do. So here. And I was like, okay. Like pretty, you know, I didn't like, I just took them, whatever. Pretty pleasant interaction. And I was like, okay, what's the catch here? Because, you know, when it happens to covert narcissist behavior, there's always a catch. And with this person, it's always like, you're nice until you're not. When's the other shoe going to drop? Like, you didn't like make any, like, you kind of had a little passive aggressive jabs at the beginning, but for the most part, you're playing really nice right now. And like, okay. So picked up the dog, whatever, went home, decompressed the whole rest of the day, processing all the things, but like, for the most part, the interaction was positive. It could have gone very, very wrong with how nasty it was at the end. It could have been very, very bad. And I'm like, well, maybe like they realized how, you know, they've been acting and, you know, whatever. And they just, you know, want to be civil. Maybe that's it. And then I was like, maybe they're also trying to butter me up to try and get back in my life. Like, who knows, whatever. So my head's racing, work through it, make a video about how I've actually been doing really well. And it's because the tools that I use, which is very true. And then I drive home and I didn't drive home. I drove back to my friend's house. Sorry. I drove back to my friend's house with the dog, hung out, spent the rest of the day with them, felt really good. And then I went home. Um, and then I took about a week almost to sit on, like, I didn't text them after I left at all. Okay. But then I realized, like, I should say thank you and communicate my intentions moving forward. So after I had felt better and, you know, like I was exhausted afterwards, like my nervous system the next couple of days, like I was just like depleted and emotions were all over the place. Like leading up to it was a lot. And like, you know, like being there was a lot, and anxiety and just all of these triggers that I was working through. And yes, like outside, I kept my composure, but inside that took so much work to be able to do. And so my body was tired and my brain was tired, and I just didn't have the capacity to do and appropriately, like communicate appropriately. So I waited. And then, like I said, about a week later, I said, basically, thank you again for letting me see him. I would like to be able to do this more regularly. I'm hoping like every other month or so, but I will check in with my capacity and communicate in the future and let you know. You know, and I was just like, you know, thanks again. And this is when I knew things haven't changed at all, at all. And so I kind of sat there, and her response was, no problem. He had fun, I think. Again, all on text message. But anyone else would think that that's totally fine. Like that's, oh, they're just, I think he had fun. Yeah. But the I think was a tactic. It's a form of a covert jab that is meant to be seen as positive overall. Like the overall message when you look at it is, oh yeah, no problem. He had fun. But by throwing in that little I think, the intent is like to get me to question myself and doubt if I did something wrong, to think that maybe that he didn't value the visit as much as I did, to, you know, like maybe get me to react or pull away any sense of joy or, you know, whatever positive feelings I had from the whole experience. It was really just to bring me down and bring me back and make me feel like, oh, did I do something wrong? Maybe this wasn't good. Right. But like, again, I know that. I recognize what they're doing and I'm not going to respond. And even though there was a part of me that wanted to send back the picture of how much fun we had together, it's very clear he looks miserable, right? Send back a picture and be like, yeah, I think so too. Petty, get on their level, match their energy, you know, like shut you up kind of thing. Or basically tell them, I know what you're doing. It's not going to work. Instead, I just didn't respond. Because I've recognized when it comes to that kind of behavior that they're looking for a reaction. They're baiting you. They get that satisfaction when you are upset by it. And instead, I'm just like, I know what you're doing. I know that's not the truth, and I'm not going to really worry about it. So I haven't said anything since because I don't have anything to say. But overall, with this experience, like, was it exhausting and was it really hard? Yeah. But also, it's like, when I was processing afterwards and all those fears that I was talking about, like, am I going to regress? Am I going to go back? Is this going to be hard? And especially because the interaction was fairly positive, right? At first, it just kind of felt like empowering. And even though things went well, I had already decided, like, I'm not going to reconcile with that person. There are no doubts in my mind that I have any intention to go back into a relationship with them, to have any kind of communication with them outside of this. And I can choose to the capacity that I wish to have my communication, or how often to see my brother, or, you know, if I'm going to be able to, or whatever, right? Like, I have a lot of power and control right now. And it was just like really a testament to how much work that I've done. And it felt like, I don't know if you ever experienced this in like your healing journey, but there are like either these people or these things or these patterns that just keep pulling you back. And it's just like this repeated cycle, right? And like, this was the one thing that could do that. Like I said, I'm thriving right now in all areas of my life. Like, I am feeling so good and at peace with myself. I have found myself. I love myself. My business is on its way. I'm really connecting with people. I'm helping people. There's like more collaborations than ever before. Like, I'm just feeling so good with where I am. I have support. I'm doing so well in therapy, like everything. My life is going so well because I have trusted myself. I have worked on everything. I have led the way in my life and created the life that I want. And knowing it's not perfect because life is life, but like ultimately, where I am so proud of. And it's the choices that I have made and it's the things that I continue to do that allow me to be there. And also, that person in my life in any capacity may impact that. Because I've talked about before, I love my mother. I would love for one day for us to be able to have a healthy reconciliation, but they would need to have a lot of healing in order to do that. And those tiny little jabs show me that they haven't changed that much. And my success and happiness and just being who I am bothers them because my lightness illuminates the darkness in them that they won't face and they don't want to heal. And as much as I can have compassion and understanding and acceptance for that, I can't allow that behavior towards me in my life. And so, me being who I am, I kind of made my decisions. And then I literally, I was like, all right, I'm going to my cards. I'm going to my cards right now. And so I went to my tarot and oracle decks and I pulled stuff and it was basically like, it was very clear, like there is still care in this relationship on both sides and maybe someday, but you know to just keep moving forward and keep doing your life. And like, it just kind of felt like I passed so many tests. Like this was the thing that could bring me back. And all I pulled were these, like, it was like for me in my life. And it was just like peace, fulfillment, all of these things. Like you've done it. It's like, here come the wonderful things. You passed the big test. You didn't go back. And it started showing up already. The like little blessings from the universe after not going back to them, not repeating that cycle, choosing to step into a new empowering cycle and just keep building and expanding and leading and being all of me and everything. And it's showing up and it's so wonderful to see. And I'm so proud of myself. I'm just so proud that I put myself in a scenario that I knew would be hard. I knew could be triggering. I knew could potentially put me back in a cycle if it went well, or it would be really hard and dysregulating if it didn't, and then pull me back in my healing that way. Like there's so many things that could have gone wrong. And the complexity also of like, I haven't seen this family like I don't even know what's happening behind closed doors. I haven't looked at I don't have any mutual people. I don't have any kind of anything. I don't know what's happening. And a lot can happen in a year. And it's been like a year and a half of no contact. But before that, I also was like another year and a half of no contact before I like lived with them for a little bit and had like minor contact and then broke it off again. So really it's been about like 3.5 years in my life that I haven't had much contact with them. And like when you have that connection again, like with my brother, I kind of got filled in on some of the things that were happening. Like I found out that he was baby Yoda for Halloween. And that's really sweet and cute and was so excited to share that with me. And I'm like, wow, I missed that. And so there's just like there's a bunch of things that happen that I know I missed out on. And so it can be really hard to sit with that. But also, again, I know I made the right decisions. And so it's 111 as I'm saying that. I love that. It's just, it's very clear that like with all of the signs that I keep getting and have been getting since the beginning, that I have done the right thing for myself. And also like I continue to do the right thing for myself. I'm not going backwards. I've done this. And yes, there is a lot of bittersweet feelings, and who knows if it's going to be a couple months from now or how long it's going to be till I see him again, honestly. But all I know is that I continue to make the right choices for myself. And what people don't understand about no contact is that it is so hard to manage. And, there are those things that come up with, what if someone dies? What if something significant happens? What if, there's so many events that can happen that maybe will change your mind or whatever, or prepare you or change the direction that you're headed in or whatever it is, right? It's like there's so many nuances, and then holidays are hard. And then, it's just like it's a different life. But ultimately, what people have to understand is that it's a different life that we have chosen because the other life with those people in our life not only hurts us, but holds us back. They're not accepting of who we are. Whether you are someone who is neurodivergent or a trauma survivor or part of the LGBTQIA plus community, no contact is a decision that people make for themselves. And it is not always easy. And there are so many nuances. And sometimes that does include having minimal contact or lower contact or whatever it is. But ultimately, it's because someone had to choose themselves because others were unable to give them what they needed or be healthy or supportive. And that's one of the most empowering things of all. And so I get so upset with just society's view on this because they want to blame the person who chooses to go no contact, especially when it comes to like the adult child and parents. How dare you? You have one parent, you have one mother, you have one father. They're getting old. You're selfish. You're entitled. You're going to want everything in their will. You just are cutting people off. You people in your mental health, you snowflakes. Like, what do you expect people to be perfect? Like, just all of these narratives. Not once have I heard the narrative, unless it is from someone else who has had to go no contact themselves or a trauma survivor who would understand, is that I am so sorry that you had to choose that. They must have done something so awful for you to choose that for yourself. To disconnect from someone you love so deeply, that had to have hurt you so much. And it does. And also, it's one of the most empowering things because you are choosing yourself. If someone can't respect you or love you the way that you deserve to be loved, you've tried time and time again, they don't deserve your energy and they don't deserve your time. And blood or not, whatever type of relationship it is, you know yourself now and you put yourself first enough to be able to only support and be around those people who care about you, love you, see you, value you, and add to your life, not those who take away. And that takes strength and is so empowering to make that decision, and also all of the other things. I'm thinking of the Taylor Swift 22 lyric, happy, free, confused, and lonely all at the same time. Yes, all of those things. And also peace, yourself, authenticity, not being held back. It is so hard. Going back into even minimal contact, even with that, brought up so much. Seeing their patterns and how they haven't changed, that's hard. All of the things that I had to do in my work and my healing to be able to make this decision, these fears and these things that were swirling around, those are all valid. And also, I know myself. I trust myself. I love myself. And I've got myself. I made the right decision and I continue to make the right decision. And I can continue to make the right decisions for me, regardless of how circumstances change. And I want to remind anyone who knows someone who is no contact, or you ever come across someone who is, or if you someone who are no contact yourselves, it is one of the hardest choices to choose to walk away from someone you love and rebuild the life that you want without them. There may be a hole. Life will look different. It's doable. You can choose for your life to be different, though. Different doesn't have to mean bad. And if you're anything like me, different wasn't bad. Different has allowed me to create so much space in my life for aligned people and opportunities. People who see me and love me and want the best for me and are supporting me on this next chapter in my life. It's been lonely. There's been holes. And especially when it comes to my brother, there's just a hole in my heart when he's not around that nothing can fill. And I will figure out in my own way what that looks like moving forward for me and what my capacity is for that. I've come to an acceptance place with the other people that it's not changing and they're not meant to be in my life right now. And it doesn't mean I have to have a life of lack. I can have a life of abundance and feel whole and complete. And I don't have to joke around and be little orphan Tay. I can be just Tay and choose myself. So, to anyone who has had to choose yourself, I see you. I am you. You're not alone. And if anyone hasn't said it lately, I am so proud of you. And I'm sorry that you had to be put in that position to make a decision that heavy. I hope you feel empowered knowing that you're making decisions for yourself and prioritizing your peace and your happiness. Something that if I had to guess, probably you were told was not available to you. And if you chose to pursue anything like that, you were selfish. And I know you know better now. And even in the hardest moments, I hope that you have peace in your decision, because it's not always easy. But you've got this. And just trust yourself. If there are things that you need to do to get yourself to a certain point and you want to reestablish some kind of contact, whatever that is, that's up to you. You can have feelings about the situation. The other parties can have feelings about the situation. That's all valid. There's so many both ands in this scenario. It doesn't take away from the fact that this is what needs to happen. Not everyone's going to understand. But I really hope that you remember that you are good enough and you are worthy of wonderful things. You are not broken. You are not less than. Society may see things as different sometimes. You can find people who see you and get it and want to support you and love you regardless. There may not be this built-in safety net of family, which I sometimes have a hard time with, but you can create your own environment of safety. And as someone who used to be super hyper independent, those tendencies come out, especially when you're dealing with stuff regarding no contact. You don't want to burden anyone around you. No one could possibly understand this. But it's because I made the plans in place that I did, knowing when I was going to see my mother, that I am okay with everything now. I had support around me. And I actually didn't like fully, like I still haven't had like a big like emotional breakdown processing moment. I've just had to kind of distance sharing things with people because I used to be very codependent. Let's just be honest, recovering codependent, because we're always in recovery from that, right? And everyone else's opinions and thoughts and emotions would play so much into my own decisions that I didn't tell people until I knew what I was doing about it. And I'm someone who likes to just react immediately and get things off my plate immediately. And it's like a right now. It took a week to get back to that parent and text them after. That's growth. I waited till I had capacity. I didn't respond to these attempts to bring me back, to hurt me. in which, of course, anyone who knows any type of covert narcissistic tactics know that like that baiting and guilting, that if I would have said anything, they would have said that I was responding or overreactive or defensive or the problem or whatever it is. They would have then blamed me and all that gaslighting. I know that. That's that cycle. That's that cycle that I don't have to engage in anymore because I've chosen no contact to stay out of that cycle. I'm informed enough about those things that I don't have to add to those. I can see them without the need to call them out. I used to always have to call them out. Like, I see you. You're not getting anything over on me. Which, like, sometimes it's okay to do that. But in my case, I know that it would only make things worse. So I don't. But all this to say, when it comes to no contact, it's your choice. It's your decision. And whatever boundaries, low contact, whatever, if you just want to text them, or, you know, like if you're like me, where you have a sibling dynamic and you have to see them briefly to see your siblings, I don't know what it is. If you've been no contact for 5 years and have no idea what's going on and you're just living a life completely differently, and sometimes you think of them and miss them, it's all valid. It's all valid. And I really hope that one day society understands and stops blaming people who have to do this. It sucks to be put in this position. It really does. But also, I'm really glad that I chose this for myself. My life is better. And you can do it. It might look different. You might need to have more tools and supports. Maybe you need to learn more about nervous system regulation. That's what I needed. And I got there. And now I teach it, by the way. There's a course if you want to check that out. It's on my website. But like, you can empower yourself to get those tools and supports and people and things in your life to make it a little bit easier to manage. And I hope you know that you are not actually without power and control here. And actually, you probably have more power and control in this dynamic than you ever have, if I had to guess. So use that, own that, go back to yourself. You know what to do. No one else has a right to comment on your choices, especially when it comes to no contact. And if they do, distance yourself, remove that thought adding to your circle of thoughts when you're making decisions. Just pull that out and say, that's a you thing, not a me thing. People have very strong opinions about no contact. It's not traditional. I get it. But forced contact is used to maintain abuse. Survivors Overcoming Silence is a space created because so many survivors were silenced, shamed, forced into submission, stuck in this dysfunctional family pattern because that's just the family. Families stick together. Every time you try to speak up of that's not right, you are silenced or shunned. Survivors Overcoming Silence is a space that gets it. And it's not only overcoming that silence of the dynamics that allow the abuse to continue, but also it's overcoming silence of you forcing yourself to be small and healing loudly, blossoming, taking back your life, empowering, freaking flourishing, and giving you the tools to be able to do that. So, whatever it is that you are after in this life, I hope you know that it's available to you. You can create the life that you want and reclaim your authentic self. Only have the alignment and authenticity, which was in my last solo episode, regardless of what other people think. It really is possible. It can be hard, but it's possible. And this page and this community and everything is here to give you the ability to do that. Maybe the tools or supports that you may be missing, even if it's just I'm proud of you. And that's what you needed to hear that you haven't heard. This community is for. There's a lot who don't get it. And I'm here to share that even though I can't understand your individual situation, I get it. Our stories may be different, but abuse patterns are similar. And you're not alone. And I'm grateful that I have the ability to come and share and reflect these things with you all because, one, not only is it healing for me, but also I know how important these topics are, and people don't talk about the nuances of all of these things. When we don't talk about them, we suffer in this silence alone. There's so many things to the name, y'all. Like, there's so many things. So important. Overcoming survivors, overcoming silence in all the ways, man. Like that's what this is. And I'm just very grateful that I can be a vessel for this important message. And I have the education and the experience and the ability to bring the education to you that you need, whether it's just on the podcast or hiring courses or public speaking down the road. It's a blessing and an honor to get to do what I do. And sometimes I forget that as the real world stuff kicks in. But I'm honestly just really grateful for you all, this community. And not only that, the response that you all showed me when I posted that video about seeing my brother. So kind, so sweet. I know I am so supported too. This community is truly wonderful. There are a lot of internet spaces that are not, the internet can be awful. And I can proudly say that this community is so supportive and wonderful. And that just brings me like all of these warm and fuzzy feelings. We must have done something right together, y'all. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'm just reminding you and empowering you in whatever way you need for your own overcoming journey. I'll see you next time.